The journey continues here on Commentator's Corner, as for episode 35, I have a very, very good friend based in Braunschweig, or for those unfamiliar with German city names, it's Brunswick. Welcome to the show, Yannik Haustein. Yannik, it's been a while since we last caught up, buddy. Missed each other at the Sim Racing Expo in Dortmund because you were only there for the day and I was all over the shop. But how are things, buddy? How are you keeping?
Indeed, yeah. Hey, Alex, thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Hope the same is true for you. Pretty busy, of course, as always, but yeah, can't complain.
Well, Yannik, the first thing I like my guests to do is just to, in your own time, introduce yourself to the viewers and the listeners and tell them what you do for a living.
All right. So you may have seen me here or there. I on certain streams at Sim Racing Expo or whatever, but it's more likely that you've read from me. I'm the the lead editor for Overtake and Race Department. So in that sense, I kind of got to know Alex in another job in the same industry, basically. And yeah, so I write about sim racing most of the time. Do some streams here and there as well. Have a nice podcast that Alex has been a guest on twice already too. That's all in German though, so if you want to get that language up to speed, be my guest. No worries.
Yeah, of course, the podcast that is going to be linked in the description down below is Sim Racing Buddies. I've made 2 appearances, one remotely from home, and the other time when I actually went over to visit Yannik and his other half, Laura, who actually works for VW, and met your feline companion as well in the flesh.
True.
But Yannik, sim racing is really on an upward curve at the moment. There's a lot of things happening. We will have a discussion about a particular entity that is going through a very, very distinct and very public rough patch at the moment. But how did you get involved with sim racing first of all? I take it was the fun aspect, wasn't it?
Yeah, that and growing up during the peak Michael Schumacher years, basically. I was a huge F1 fan as a kid, of course. Like every other Sunday, when they still raced every other Sunday and not all the time, basically. That was pretty much sacred. 2 p.m. German time, the TV had to be on. And that was basically my kind of gateway into doing this sort of myself, basically, or, do what they did on TV as well. And it really started with racing games on the PS1. Also, in part on PC, because a good friend of mine from my kindergarten days actually had a Grand Prix 2 at the time, which we played a ton with like all the assists enabled because we were like 6 or something, but that was good fun. And yeah, things kind of escalated after a while via GTR2, later on Project Cars 2. Yeah, and then at some point graduated from a controller to a wheel, then back to a controller because the wheel broke, and then back to wheels, and well, here we are playing pretty much everything that has, an engine and 4 wheels virtually.
Yeah, I mean, when I came to visit you and Lara, I think it was earlier on this year, wasn't it? If I remember correctly,
it was in July, I believe.
July, during the nice German summer, and yeah, that did prompt a trip to Braunschweig. I think I stayed locally at Gifhorn, which is about 25-30 minutes away. And I think the first time I tried parking there was quite a comedy of errors, because I think every 3 minutes I was on the phone to Yannik. But sim racing also has, as I've talked with a multitude of my guests, and obviously anyone within the sim racing community, that being on the end of a Discord server is one thing. Mm-hmm. Being at an event like, say, the Sim Racing Expo, of course, we've got DreamHack Winter in Jönköping for in Sweden this weekend, for, as we're recording this episode, for ESLR1, the full majors. it's really nice to see that the LAN events and are helping to bring the community back together in person. That's the thing that we both feel personally that sim racing has been missing since everything kicks off in February to April 2020, when everything started getting locked down, and then we were cooped up like wild animals in cages and sort of like stuck in a rut. It's really nice to see these events start to come back, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, driving virtually, having that competitive mindset, or as is the case in my case, that historical curiosity, as you might be able to tell, that's just part of the equation, really. The friends you make along the line, pretty much. That's a different part of the story. For example, my podcast buddy, my co-host, basically, I didn't know him until I ran into him in a public lobby in ACC, I believe it was. Month later, we did an endurance race together, and then we had that idea, hey, let's do a podcast. And meeting him in person for the first time was pretty cool as well, because you talk regularly. Same with you too. When we started working together at said former job. When we finally met in person for the first time, that was super cool as well. And it's just always special to have all the faces you've seen online so many times actually around you, because it's a different kind of interaction. It's just much more fun, much more laid back, I feel, even if it's laid back already on Discord or whatever the service of your choosing. It's just a good time usually, and yeah, that was missing for sure. So it's good to see that it's coming back, or has been coming back.
So you start your journey off, obviously, watching the great Michael Schumacher, during his Ferrari days, becoming a 7-time Formula One world champion. Then you got bitten by the bug by jumping on a PS1. Of course, you had the likes of Gran Turismo, Ridge Racer, all those iconic sort of like perspective games where it's like, yeah, I could really do it. And then obviously going through the controller to steering wheel to controller to full rig. Now, I have actually driven Yannick's rig, which actually got the story that Yannick kindly filmed for me was me doing a few laps in a Brazilian stock car, the one driven by Duro Barrichello, the number 91 Toyota Camry from Full Time Sports around Goiânia. And that was actually the main circuit, not the tri-oval that they have. I mean, it's always really nice to get behind the wheel and sort of push the limits of the car, but also your own limits. I mean, one of the things that I always laugh at, and this is just from a personal standpoint, is the amount of times go, how are you feeling? Yeah, I'm feeling good. Bit sweaty, though, It's not so easy behind the wheel of the sim, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I've had that sort of, not discussion, but conversation just yesterday, actually, because I was taking part in the SimGrid community creator clash, I think it was called. I always mix up the C words there. And that just about worked with my schedule for hockey practice afterwards, because I play ice hockey as well. So I was texting a friend of mine who was picking me up, and I'm like, "Yeah, you should be fine time-wise. Need to get in a very quick shower." And he was like, "Huh? Shower before practice?" And I just told him, "Yeah, you wouldn't believe how much you sweat in these races. It's actually, yeah, it's a thing. Even worse in the summer. So yeah."
Which means that there needs to be a big old fan on standby just behind that curved screen on your sim rig, my friend.
Ideally.
yeah, ideally. If it's 30, 32 degrees, yeah, you need literally a blitzkrieg fan in there, to be completely honest with you. But moving...
Closed cockpit simulator.
Yeah, exactly. So from the sim racing aspect, how did that turn into your now journalistic endeavors, which you've been doing for quite a few years within the sim racing space?
Pure coincidence? Well, not pure, but sort of. I've been working for a local newspaper or I had been working for a local newspaper for years in the sports section. So I was used to reporting on pro sports like hockey, like soccer or football, whatever you prefer in that regard. And these little emails that Twitter sometimes send out if you don't shut off the alerts, like XYZ has posted or tweeted in that case. And that was the case for me when Race Department posted about looking for riders back in 21, I believe. So just me seeing that in my inbox was the coincidence, I guess. And I figured, I love motorsport, I love racing. Might as well, write to them, see what happens, because it wasn't quite clear if that was part-time, full-time, or even if it was paid or not. But I felt like, I could actually pursue my passion that way, because where I'm at, there's really no racing going on. Closest track to me is Oschersleben, which is about an hour away, something like that. So it's not really a motorsport region here, unfortunately. So no chance to get the foot in the door via the newspaper there. And it turned out there we're actually looking for a new content team. Yeah, A led to B basically, and been doing that ever since. Pretty interesting how that turns out sometimes.
Yeah, because when Yannick and I actually first met, it was in Nuremberg Sim Racing Expo 2022, and we were working together on an editorial team. And I remember when we were having a discussion, and this is where the funny moment comes in. Because there's two actually to talk about, which I wanted to get these out of the way, but they happened at the same event, folks. So we've got the exhibitors race on the Thursday, because back then it was a 4-day event. And Yannick, I'm going to cast your mind back to when myself and a certain Corbinian Rubenbauer interviewed you on December, when you screenshotted the stream and went, casually getting interviewed by two absolute legends in Alex Goldschmidt and Corby Rubenbauer. And then my response was, just had to do it, and you knew it would happen. You didn't let the side down. But it's quite a weird thing when you're the one being interviewed rather than interviewing other people, isn't it? When you're on the other side of the coin.
It is, yeah. Usually you're always, you have a certain mindset going into interview situations. You know that probably better than anyone else. And the reversal of that is, kind of weird if you're not used to it. Same with being on camera and everything if you're not used to that either. I think I've gotten better with that, so that should have been all right, I suppose. But yeah, it was kind of weird, and you always have to try to be spontaneous and authentic, I guess. But you don't want to say anything wrong either. So getting that balance between being laid back and professional at the same time, it's a bit of a challenge, but good fun, I found. So definitely not the last time, I hope.
Yeah, I'm sure. But then there was a second funny moment, and we have to give a shout out to TK, Tony Kanaan, absolute legend, now concentrating on his Stock Car Pro Series career full time. I've had the opportunity of commentating on him for Cascavel, the first visit, and also round 9 quite recently when Stock Car Pro Series went over to Buenos Aires to the Autodromo Oscar y Juan Galvez. But the story, basically, long story short, so I'm going to condense this, that we made a plan of attack, me and Yannick, that we try and get an interview with TK. So I've gone. So we've walked into the lounge. We're going to grab some lunch, but I said, "Hang on, there's Tony. We better collar him now." And I walk over and I said, "God, I can't believe it. Tony, I finally meet Tony Kanaan, and last week it was Rubens Barrichello." And Tony looks at me with this cheeky grin on his face with his wife Lauren alongside. Great people, by the way. He said, "Oh, you saw Rubinho last week? Oh, poor you." And I said, and like the laughter started, and then we had to set up the interview. Now, because of my scheduling for broadcasting, I couldn't do the interview. We were going to tag team it, weren't we, if I remember correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And then
That was the idea, yeah.
That was the idea. So I said to Yannik, you got to take this one. I can't do it. As much as I'd love to, I've got to go on broadcast. And so we went over, spoke to Tony. He was working with Gomez Sim Industries. Now, Yannik, there was a particular standout moment that never made the cut on the interview. Tell the folks at home what happened.
Yeah, so we were a little bit challenged in the audio department. Let's just say that. We had this little mic that you could attach to your phone, which we did. And that, of course, picked up a lot of the ambient noise as well. And it was in this catering area as well, where like exhibitors and their business partners could go and eat. Same for us. And I think like not even 5 minutes in, someone dropped a metal tray somewhere in the background. Super loud bang. Of course, it's absolutely audible on the recording. And Tony, being the absolute professional that he is, was just like, "All right, we'll do that again." And as far as I'm concerned, you couldn't even tell because guys have been a pro for like 30 years probably now. So yeah. Well, not 30, but he's been around media for quite a while. So, I think that came through as pretty authentic still.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, he was at the expo for 3 days, signing autographs, meeting people, and everything else like that. But to meet him in person, I think was really, really cool. Moving on from those particular funny moments, which I had to bring up really in the show. I mean, that's what good friends do. We look back at certain memories, and those are two that really sort of fix in our mind. But of course, you made it to Dortmund. I think it was just for the Friday for this year's Expo, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was Friday, exactly.
In comparison to what you saw at the Expo this year, in comparison to last year, with some of the new providers coming on board, like say Conspit, PXN, you had Coffee Racer with that coffee table stroke sim rig contraption, which got a lot of love in the room. I think was it nice to see those new hardware providers actually being a part of the expo for this year?
I think it's always nice if you have new stuff, in one place to try out. It's much better than sim racing companies popping up all over the shop. But first time you're actually gonna get in touch with their hardware is once you've ordered it or something. I think it also helps with developing ideas. Being inspired by stuff that you find there. If you are a business there, like a sim racing hardware manufacturer, for example, you walk around there, and even if it's just chatting to people to possibly cooperate with, or getting inspired by something someone has done already, not in the way that you want to copy it, but that it might kick off another train of thought, maybe. Also from the visitor's side, of course, it's always good to have variety at your fingertips, basically. Stuff that you probably don't have at home. Let's face it, I don't think that many sim racers have a motion rig at home, for example. But want to try, or VR, for example. It's always a good experience as well. If you can stand that without getting motion sick, that's apparently a thing. So. Yeah, but in general, I think as it is in so many places, competition is good for business, for furthering things along a little bit, and that regard, it was kind of cool to see how many small but passionate companies there are actually in sim racing right now.
Yeah, I got to know Holly from Live to Race for that big, huge, shiny simulator, because they do a lot of work with F1 teams, and we were staying at the Mercure, like literally about 60 seconds away from the exhibitor entrance. And I remember speaking to Holly. I think it was Saturday morning at breakfast. And I went, "How's it all going for you guys?" And she said, "It's really, really good. Apart from the fact when Hazatec fire out that damn LMP3, it's the same every year with Andre Eriksson and the team at Hazatec, but." Okay, yeah, we didn't have some of the like the people, the companies that a lot of people know, like Heusingfeld, Simucube, amongst others, not being there at the expo. But in terms of the layout, because it was only in one hall, did it feel a little bit more compact, a little bit easier to sort of like negotiate your way around? So like, how was it in your eyes in comparison with 2022 with the vast amount of space that there was at Nuremberg?
I think due to the amount of people, it might have actually been harder to go from A to B. Well, not just the amount, basically just their compressedness, if you will, because everything was much tighter, much more closer or much closer together. It felt like, but yeah, it was. It was good to see so many people interested in that.
It was the fact that it was in one hall, so you had the stage. Let's look at it from a general overview. That the stage was a lot smaller, a lot more cozy, a lot more community orientated, and there were multiple panels, including when Suelio Almeida did his book launch, the Motor Racing Book Volume 1, which I do have a signed copy. Thank you, Suelio, for that. But I think in terms of the proximity of obviously Dortmund being in the Ruhrgebiet, hotels, logistics in terms of travel, things were a lot more, I think, better placed. And of course, Sim Racing Expo now is staying at the Dortmund Messe until 2027, which I think is good in terms of stability for the event to grow and sort of like blossom. Would you agree that's probably the same in some respects? I know everyone wants to go back to the Nürburgring, but I think by having that stability for 5 years does actually help the show to evolve, doesn't it?
I mean, it should, in theory, looking at the numbers of that metropolitan area. I mean, just by having it there in the same spot, you have the same people that might not be able to go there one year, be able to go the next. So I think some sort of stability always helps, some sort of, continuity as well. Let's see how it develops there, because, you never know. But, I mean, people going back to or wanting to go back to the Nürburgring, I mean, that couldn't be a better backdrop. But also it's like out in the sticks, if we're honest. You can't really get there unless you got a car. So
yeah. And I think, and I think some of the people were also saying that the expo, in some respects, the Nürburgring being a great backdrop, but then the show got to the point with exhibitors and like the main stage and everything, taking up so much space on the promenade, and there's only so much space that you can have. So it kind of sort of meant that there had to be a new direction. But we'll move away from Sim Racing Expo and talk about a particular entity within the sim racing world. We are now going to talk about, and I think probably might be worth sort of like in depth from a neutral perspective rather than me as a sim racing commentator and you as an editor. But let's look at the situation with what is happening with motorsport games. There has been a lot happening. There was a board walkout in early November. Dimitri Kosko was out in April of this year. Stephen Hood took over. Their Q2 earnings weren't good. We then had the layoff of 40% of their workforce in early November. That it also impacted, I think, a very, very good content-driven website and in terms of traction.gg. A lot of their people, we have to think of the likes of Thomas Harrison Lord, John Monroe, Ross McGregor, Piers Pryor. A lot of people were significantly affected by that. And now we've had the TOCA have now gone, right, the British Touring Car Championship license is no longer being affected. IndyCar has done that as well. NASCAR have also gone. And now, as of the day we're recording this, November the 23rd, which is Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to all our friends over in North America and Canada, a potential of the delisting of MSGM from NASDAQ, which is a major stock exchange over in North America. in your personal opinion, it doesn't look that great, does it?
Not really, no. I mean, I don't really understand terribly much of the stock markets and financial and whatever.
Mm,
But from what I've read, from what we've covered too, it's really, not a good outlook. Let's just say that. Especially if you have your partners pulling their licenses because these agreements aren't being honored or
hmm
stand no chance of being honored, really, from their point of view. I think the IndyCar one isn't quite official yet. They intend to do that, but I think Motorsport Games is disputing that. But if it's not really going to lead to much in terms of a dedicated IndyCar game, then isn't it? If you have this dispute over a license, then
hmm
yeah, the NASCAR one they sold to iRacing, which was probably a good move because
Yeah.
remember iRacing in its very roots goes back to NASCAR racing season 2003 to Papyrus when that was still around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably in good hands now. It definitely sucks for fans of BTCC and IndyCar. The latter, I would count myself in very much. Love that series. I would have loved a dedicated game with all the races,
hmm
the proper mechanics and everything in place for the Indy 500 in particular too. But yeah, what you gonna do? It's it's headline after headline right now, and not the good kind, unfortunately.
No, I mean the thing was, I mean, if anyone might remember, Marcel Offermans, one of the big people at Studio 397, um, then announced his departure
Hmm.
from it. Of course, the title that everyone is waiting to see is Le Mans Ultimate, which
Hmm.
we have seen. I think we have seen some sort of like video trailers now on Le Mans Ultimate, which is a production between I think it's MSGM, ACO, and Studio 397. Of course, Studio
Right. Yeah.
397 are operated and owned by Motorsport Games, because Pierre Fillon, who is the head of the ACO, but it's Gerard Neveu who's actually an advisor to Motorsport Games, especially through the Le Mans Virtual Series, which we had
Mm.
a multitude of runnings. Of course, no one knows if that's coming back. That has gone. That has gone completely dark.
Mm.
Great production values having Le Mans Virtual 24 hours. Of course, the Le Mans license, when that happened, put a lot of
Mm.
noses out of joint when, they used to be the iRacing Le Mans 24. They used to be the iRacing Indianapolis 500. And it's, I think it's the knock-on effect of, this is how I see it, that sometimes if you take on quite a lot, we saw the fallout from NASCAR Ignition,
Mm.
which
True.
was not pretty. It was like a car crash over a 6-lane highway on Route 66. That's how bad it
Hmm.
was. Like the reviews weren't going well. And then we saw that one-off. I think it was like an IndyCar Challenge race on R Factor 2. It was Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course. I still remember
Mm.
my good friend Chris McCarthy was doing the comms on that for them. But then BTCC were like, yeah, we've signed with Motorsport Games. There's going to be a bespoke game coming out. And then I think the cracks started to show a little bit. I mean, apart from NASCAR Ignition, I think it was when the British Touring Car Championship DLC was being released bit by bit. It wasn't like
Hmm.
here's a game. It's like we need to start getting this content out.
Yeah,
So
it seemed that way.
it was a
Yeah.
case of, well, let's get the tracks out there. Let's get the cars. Let's get the liveries. Let's get everyone excited about it.
Mm.
And obviously, myself and Yannick, we don't know the specifics of the agreement between Toka and MSGM and Studio 397 reference the license. That's between them. That will stay between them. But I think by doing the DLC bit by bit, they sort of put themselves in a difficult position, I think, MSGM. But they
Mm.
were trying to get the dynamics of the cars correct, trying to make them look as literally as detailed as possible with the official liveries. So I don't know how much pushback there was from Toka, which is run by. You don't want to get on the bad side of Alan Gao at all. You do not want to mess with him. So I think at the end of the day, it could be the case that whether Toka might say to MSGM, "Well, you need to pull that content off your profile." There is a possibility that could happen. Alan Gao is incredibly proud of what he's achieved with the British Touring Car Championship. But this has sort of put a fly in the ointment, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think it already happened, actually. The content is still there because it's not the series or anything, and it's pretty much the cars. I'm not sure about the liveries, but in the R Factor 2 online environment, that has been a pretty big hit since it released a few weeks ago. There used to be a BTCC event, like a regular event, special event. I don't know the exact name there, but it was. I'm pretty sure it was BTCC in name, and now it's something like Touring Car Cup or something like that. Because if I remember correctly, that statement by Toka specifically mentioned all licensing deals with motorsport games, which would then mean it would affect the R Factor 2 side of things as well.
So, firstly, from a licensing perspective, it would be the liveries of the cars. So, Napa Racing, Accelerate, Team Hard, all the teams at West Surrey Racing, one of the most dominant forces in British Touring Car Championship history, which is completely understandable. And obviously, with the stock exchange side of things losing, it's going to further devalue any sort of valuation reference motorsport games. But yeah, Yannik, thanks for your insight on that. But let's turn to the Sim Racing Buddies podcast. Which I've been the guest of a couple of times. Of course, when you, myself, and Patrick, we did those 2 episodes, and I think the first appearance was when we were talking about Grassgate, 24 Hours of Spa, iRacing, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
And I went, we might want to do this in English, and then it was earlier on this year in July, where it was 3 months after I'd done my gig at the Tempelhof circuit for Formula E as the circuit commentator, and to then have I wouldn't say the cojones to do it, but the confidence, I think, to do that episode in German. Because we've known each other for quite a time. It was great to finally meet your other half. And also, for those that don't know, one of the extracurricular activities that Yannik has, apart from playing ice hockey, is he likes to be on the hockey at a darts board. And you've got one at home in the main corridor, which is, I can't remember how many stories your flat is up that building. I mean, it was a long
19.
look down. Oh, yeah, that was a long look down when I looked over the parapet and went, thank God there's a net there. But you're a bit of the sim racing equivalent of Timo Glock then, because Glock likes the dart. Yes, well, if most people don't know, ex-F1 driver and also current DTM driver from BMW, Timo Glock is a big darts fan. How did you get hooked on the events at the Oki and then start to play as well?
Yeah, learn something new every day. I do remember we had like an electronic, like soft tip board way back when. I was like, I don't know, 7 or something, and my dad always won. So there was that, and then it just vanished for, I don't know, 20 years, more probably. What really got it going again is that my girlfriend's family hosts a yearly like family internal darts championship. So of course that's kind of motivating to practice, to get better and everything. So that's kind of what kicked that off a few years ago, and kind of got my best friend into it again as well. He's always been one of the a guy for these pub type of games, like I don't know if you call it foosball in the in the UK as well, but the like table football thing.
Yeah. That table football, as we would call it in the UK, where you basically
Okay.
you spin the players around as much as you
Yeah.
can.
That.
Or you got either it's either spots or stripes. So you got like the traditional like American style pool table, or you got the one in the UK where it's either yellows or reds, and you got an eight ball.
Okay.
So table football or fußball.
Okay,
yeah.
So yeah, that also, that creates a friendly rivalry, of course, because there's no way the other guy's better than yourself. Um, yeah, and I think what helps is that it's such an approachable, well, game, sport, whatever you want to call it. Don't really need much except patience and a certain self-loathing, especially at the beginning, if you can't hit doubles. Um, but yeah, it's good fun. It's like I said, pretty approachable. Good fun at your dartboard at home. But we've been to a pub a couple of times as well, and just played there. It's pretty sociable as well. It seems so. Also, good sport to watch on TV. If I find so.
Yeah, I'll
World
definitely.
Championships and everything every year.
Yeah, with the PDC, with the likes of Van Gerwen and everybody else. But yeah, it was a lot of fun when we were playing and we we were having the doubles matches. And what I mean by is when you're missing so many doubles, you each get onto either double two or double one, and then Yannick hits a 180. At one point, I've hit 2 bullseyes, and I don't know how I've done it. I've just fluked it in completely.
True, yeah.
But I think that's also good that we have these other activities outside of our full-time jobs, whether it be in your role as lead editor for overtake.gg and race department, along with the streaming, and the odd occasional time when you'll do a stream for Overtake and have a lot of fun doing it. And like myself, with being a commentator stroke presenter, where you're able to just sort of enjoy something away from, wondering, your phone going off and everything like that. And we were playing until, I think it was quite late in the evening. I think it was the last night I was in Gifhorn. And I think we were playing until about 11 o'clock at night or something like that, weren't we, if I remember correctly? But it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, yeah. It took a while. Not because we didn't hit the doubles anymore, because the first night that was actually the case. But the learning curve was like this the next day, and we had a almost world-class match going on my hallway, basically.
Yeah,
pretty good stuff.
a lot of fun. Yannick, there's some routine questioning that I like to put my guests through anyway, but don't worry, it won't be the one. Well, the last question might give you a nice little thinking pause, so to speak.
All right.
Now, have you ever been starstruck meeting a racing driver or a personality within either sim racing or motorsport? Has that ever happened to Yannik Haustein?
That's a tough one, because I think I've met most racing or sim racing people after I was working for said newspaper with pro athletes and everything for quite a while. So that sort of went away a little bit. I remember it being true for a hockey player once.
Okay.
Because I've spent half a year in Philadelphia back in 2016. Working with like a youth extension from off the NHL team there, and they had this golf tournament, and all of a sudden, for those who know hockey, Philadelphia Flyers alumni Chris Pronger is in front of me, and that is a scary man. He used to be on the ice as well. You wouldn't want to get close to him as a defenseman. Turned out to be a super funny encounter, but still, that sort of thing. Really struck. I mean, closest would probably be TK, because let's face it, that man's a multiple IndyCar champion, Indy 500 winner as well, driven everything he could get his hands on. Absolute legend. So that was actually pretty cool, and I was kind of glad that you found a nice introduction for us there.
Well, I think it was more the case of, okay, because I just went in there like both feet first because of my experience within real life motorsport, because I've been in it for, I think, close to a decade and a half, and having met so many people, you know, like when I was in Portimao the week before and just going up to speak to Rubens and introduce myself. I hadn't.
Right.
People like said, "Oh, there's Rubens," and one of my friends, Cody Schindel from CKN, Canadian Kart News, was doing a lot of coverage for Team Canada, and he papped me as I was talking to Rubens. And there's this fantastic shot that I'm going to put on the screen now, because I will be very shortly. Well, this episode will probably be happening after it, but I'll be heading to the 23rd running of the Rotax Max Challenge Grand Finals in Bahrain, right by the Formula One circuit. And Rubens and Dudu have qualified again. Only this time, Rubens has decided to go for DD2 Masters. He's still probably about 25 inside, but yeah, it's great because having to, you know, commentate over the pair of them this year has been an absolute pleasure, actually, in a series, you know, because it's a father and son teammate relationship, you know, and Rubens has always been the person of saying, you know, I've had my fair crack of the whip, and now it's time for the boys to do their thing. And you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in the Barrichello family. Their cousin Pipi Bartu is actually the son of Rubens' sister, was actually racing in Cascavel, and when Dudu took his first win at race 2, I still remember Rubens. He had an absolute shocker in that race. For those that didn't catch what happened that weekend, I remember it vividly alongside Carlos Costa, who's the normal colour commentator for the Stock Car Pro Series for motorsport.tv, and it was my first weekend covering it. Wasn't able to go to Brazil, but you know what? It was pretty cool actually being able to do it from home and working for motorsport.tv, so I was pretty proud of that. And then literally it's 2 corners to go, and Rubens, half a lap before that, had started. You could see the tears were welling up because it's like, oh my God, my boy's going to do it. And the words that I said were, it's Eduardo Barrichello, and I say the words muito parabéns, which is many congratulations. The muito gets, for some reason on the stream, missed out by some sheer technical coincidence, and it was just parabéns to the number 91 who crosses the line and takes his first ever victory, which was great because I was like thinking, for me, that was one of those moments where like, holy shit, has this happened? Yeah. You know, but yeah, I think I think it was sort of the realization when I said to you when we were at the Expo in 22, I said, you're going to have to do that interview. And you were like, I could see the cogs going in your mind, like saying,
yeah,
oh, I'm doing it. Okay, right. Okay. It is what it is.
You're starting to think about that. Though I do have one more, I think, because I didn't really talk to him, but we almost had a run-in, and that was Mario Andretti at Pocono in 2016, who was, you know, just casually riding his scooter around the paddock there, and you know, with general admission, you were actually allowed to go into, you know, well, not pit lane itself, but you know, behind the wall. Even you could walk right up to the wall where the mechanics were at. And only thing you had to make sure of was not to be in the way, and that included a certain Indy 500 winning Italo-American legend just hooting around on a scooter there. It was the realization, whoa, that guy that almost ran me over actually is Mario Andretti. Holy
yeah, holy shit. Also a Formula One champion in his own right, if I remember correctly, too.
True, so, yeah. World champion in '78, right? And
still to this day does the two-person passenger ride for IndyCar, and he is still. He must be in his 80s now. He's like probably 80-something years young. that bloke has so much energy, which is...
Yeah, did you know that he actually tested at Indy as late as 2003, ready to fill in if
No
need
way.
be? Yes, had a big shunt too.
Well,
I mean, it's just racers are built differently, man. It's
I know
obvious in that case.
they're people. They're salt of the earth, just like us lot. But when you get them behind the wheel, they are a completely different animal altogether.
Yeah.
Yannick, penultimate question for you. From the top of your head, tell me about your top 3 favourite moments in motorsport that come into your head right now.
That's a tough one. I think one of them, and not just not because it's the greatest moment ever or race ever or whatever, but one thing that always comes to mind when I think back at what was great in growing up in Formula One, for example, is the '98 Belgian Grand Prix. For some reason, that stuck with me.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason should be clear, but to anyone who knows that race. But that kind of had everything really. So I tend to think back to that kind of fondly, even though I was a Schumacher fan, of course. Wasn't the race for him, obviously. But that's one.
Because that had the massive pile up, and then it was the contretemps between DC, David Coulthard, and Michael, who... I think it was like halfway through the race, like lap 24, that Schumi had closed up to DC, and there was so much spray that Michael completely misjudged it, ripped off the right front of the Ferrari, and still made it to the pit lane. The back end of Coulthard's car was an absolute mess. He made it back to the pits. And Schumacher was completely incensed. I think that his face was more beetroot than the scarlet red on his race suit as he went over to the McLaren pit lane, and DC still had his race helmet on, and there was a bit of a scuffle. I remember that one like it was yesterday. But yeah, it was a multi-car incident heading, in what was a very, very different start-finish straight as well in comparison with what we have now.
It was curved a bit more.
It was curved a bit more, and you had the steel barriers on the left-hand side of the pit straight as well.
That too, yeah. Yeah, remember at the time, Spa was still, for about half of the circuit, public road. They only changed that in, I think, 2007. Since then, it's a permanent circuit. But back then, he could drive most of that, or about half of it, when there weren't any races on it. Pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, so that's number 1. So you got 2 more to think of, my friend.
Yeah, I think I'm going to cheat a little bit here. The second one is actually a joint, not second place, but a joint entry, I think. That would be the '96 Laguna Seca race, in the kart series. The Pass, for anyone who might remember that. Alex Zanardi just sending it through the corkscrew past Brian Herta on the last lap for the win too. That's just still absolutely insane to me. Regularly rewatch that because it's so. I mean, for one, the cars sound awesome and look awesome. Like the entire '90s kart era cars are just chef's kiss. In that same vein is Gilles de Ferran's record-breaking qualifying session at Fontana in 2000. Doesn't look too spectacular, but the speed is absolutely insane, as is the sound, which legit sounds like a fighter jet at some point, just because of the reverb from the grandstands and everything. So if you want to watch one of the most beautiful type of open-wheel race car of all time, in my opinion, definitely give that a go, especially since the oval is being torn down right now. I think they intend to do a very, very short oval, but the 2-miler is gone as far as I know already, unfortunately. So, yeah, good bit of throwback, I think.
Right, Yannick, final question. But this is where the script gets a little bit flipped here, folks, and it's for very, very good reason. So
I will have one more, technically.
Okay, I'll give you the
But
benefit.
yeah, I've cheated a little bit.
Okay, look, let's get on with the last question because
Okay.
I do try and wrap these shows up within an hour, so at least we try and
Yeah,
get a welcome mix of chatter between myself and my guests. But
of
Yannick,
course.
I'm going to provide you with a question, but it has a second angle on it that you give your answer first,
Okay.
and then I give my correlating response. So, Yannick Haustein, your final question is as follows. If you had absolutely no glass ceiling when it comes to budget, unlike Formula One cost caps these days, you have a choice of a road or a race car. You can actually have more than one.
Okay.
And you want to drive said road or race car or cars at a particular circuit. What would you choose and why?
So one car, right?
You could have two. I've had
I
one
can have
guest
two.
that
Okay.
Daniel Gilligan, who's currently in Abu Dhabi for the Yas Marina Grand Prix, had 8 McLarens on his list.
Okay.
So I try and max it out at maybe 2 at a push, not any more than that. But I'll give you the choice of 2 cars. So they can both be race cars, they can both be road cars, but you've got to pick one circuit.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm not too much into road cars, to be honest. So the selection should have a certain trend. One I think would be probably the 1998 Swift kart car, as run by Newman Haas, for example. That it looks similar to the others as well, like the Reynard, for example, but it was even lower and even meaner. So that would be one that would just be absolutely insane because turbocharged V8 close to 1,000 horsepower. So lots of training required, of course.
Yeah.
That would be one, and I think the other one for the sheer iconic value would be this guy right here, the 917.
Oh,
there.
yes. The one with the number 22, which looks like it's got some sort of martini livery on it, possibly.
Yeah, that's the 71 Le Mans winner in particular up there. Now, as for a circuit, I think it might actually be Road America.
Oh.
Just from circuits that still exist. Because for example, I love classic Kyalami in sim racing. It's absolutely one of my favorite tracks of all time there, just for its simplicity, but how it works with downforce and non-downforce cars alike. But that's not there anymore, unfortunately. So can't really pick it, I think. Going onto the Nordschleife with these would be utter insanity and also a big hospital bill. So that's completely out of the question. And I mean, Road America isn't without its hazards either, but I think that's a little more humane.
Okay.
And also has enough straightaways to actually push these things a little bit if I felt like that.
Right, okay. So you're going with the Swift 009C, if I remember, which had, and I'm actually looking this information up for my benefit, 2.7 litre V8 turbo Ford XD engine. It was used by Newman Haas and Della Penna. So you had the likes of Michael Andretti, Christian Fittipaldi, Roberto Moreno, and Brazilian super sub, and Richie Hearn. The car in 19 races took 1 win, 7 podiums, 1 pole position, was second in the constructors, and Michael Andretti was 7th that year in the Newman Haas car that season, because Christian Fittipaldi did not take part in, I think it was in the Milwaukee Mile, around 7 that season, with Super Sub Moreno coming in. But the car
terrible luck.
The car that I'm going to put alongside it is one of the titans in that era of karts. I'm going to go with the Mercedes IC 108E powered Penske PC27, run by Andre Ribeiro and the legend that is Mr. Al Unser Jr. So I'm going to stick with I'm going to throw a car that was actually disguised as a Porsche 917 in the filming of Steve McQueen's Le Mans. It is the Lola T70 Coupe. That would be my choice as well. Because the Lola T70s are actually being produced by Gardner Douglas, a UK company that actually produces the T70 Spider these days, with styling inspired by the car, using a tubular space frame chassis and GRP panelling. So, yeah, I mean, the T70 was quite popular. They had an open roof Mark II Spider, they had the Mark II Coupe, and then they had a Mark II-B. So you said, what was it? Road America?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a very, very good call on the circuit. Well, if you're going to say Road America, I'm going to go to the home of Petit Le Mans, Road Atlanta. Michelin Raceway,
Nice.
Road Atlanta. So there you go, folks. It's always nice when I hear from my guests about that, and it's always quite nice because I try and think of, if I'm not 100% sure, I always look it up, and it's not. I'm a I love motorsport. I know a lot about Formula One back in the 90s and the early 2000s, but then you get your mind opened up to other motorsports because, folks, there's more than just Formula One out there. There's plenty more.
Way more. Yeah.
Way more. We both know that as well. But Yannik, thank you so much for joining me for episode number 35 of Commentator's Corner, folks. Yannick's social media, Sim Racing Buddy's social media, Overtake Race Department, it'll all be in the description down below, as well as the Spotify link for Sim Racing Buddies. So if you want to learn German, now's your opportunity by listening to it firsthand with this man being one of the presenters for it. But Yannik, thanks for joining me, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Let's do that. Thanks for having me. Massively enjoyed my time here, so pretty sure it won't be the last crossover either way.
That's definitely the case. Thanks to you all for continuing to watch Commentator's Corner, of course, available here on YouTube, not just as a video playlist, it's now available on the YouTube podcast reels as well. Along with that, we are on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Downforce Radio, the nation's motorsport station. Big thank you to you all for listening, for watching wherever you are in the world. Keep it pinned, and if in doubt, flat out, we'll see you next time for episode 36. Goodbye.